Harold, and thanks for joining me again today on Transcendent. Transcendent is your weekly Facebook Live broadcast of San Antonio in black, white, and brown, aired weekly right here around the 8-ish time frame on Influencers platform. And thanks for joining me again this week. What is SABWB? Let's refresh ourselves like you would hit the little circle on your computer to refresh. Let's refresh about what we are, who we are, and what we're doing. San Antonio in black, white, and brown seeks to be the premier space for leaders, influencers from every race, position, and perspective. Every race, every position, and every perspective. And that's quite a challenge because perspectives are different. But our challenge at SABWB is to bring those perspectives together from every race, from every position on the leadership ladder, and from every perspective, to come together to do two things: build trusting relationships. We have to learn again to trust one another, because nothing proceeds forward that is going to provide long-term sustainable change if it's not built on trust. Relationships work that way, marriages work that way, businesses work that way, churches work that way, schools work that way. All of them are built on trust. You have to be able to trust the persons that are next to you. And of course, Ronald Reagan said, trust and verify. I heard President Biden say the other day, verify and trust. I like that one too. So there is this trusting relationship that we seek to build, and we're building it for this purpose so that we can collaborate on both the value and the implementation of principles. We have to value certain principles, and then we have to implement those principles, and they shape the culture. That's why we exist. That's why each week SABWB appears here on the Influencers platform for Transcendent. And we call this time together Transcendent because our goal is really to go beyond the normal boundaries. There's so many things, and I'm going to be talking tonight to you on the new segregationist. There's so many things in our culture right now that is built and baked into the culture to separate. And it's the old divide and conquer. We've heard that and we've seen that, but somehow when we're in the forest, we can't see it for the trees that's set before us. We can't see the forest for the trees. There's so many things that are set before us that to connect the dots and get a holistic picture of what it all means can sometimes be very difficult, but that's why we're here, to help connect the dots and bring a holistic picture to leaders and influencers from every perspective. Whether you're in a household, as a leader and influencer, doesn't mean you have to lead an organization. It doesn't mean you have to lead a business, because each one of us, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, are ordained to lead. He said, let them have dominion. One aspect of that phrase, have dominion, means let them lead. So you were made, you were constructed, you were built to lead, even if that leadership is just you. You're leading you through life. In most cases, however, it spans beyond the individual, and you impact someone else or you influence someone else. And to the degree that you influence them, you also are exercising leadership where they are concerned. So that's SABWB's mantra, is why we exist. I want you to know we don't come on here to rant. We don't come on to, to spout our displeasure for the latest whatever. No, this organization is an organism, and this organism is calling together leadership personalities from every race, position, and perspective to come together to build trust, and then to collaborate both on the value and the implementation of principles that shape our culture. And you and I have an opportunity to be culture shapers. We have the opportunity not to just sit back and and wonder what happened. Somebody said there's three groups of people in the world, and one group is those who make things happen, and the second group are those who watch things happen, and the third are those who wonder what happened. And my call to you as influencers, wherever you are, whatever your race is and whatever your perspective is not to be in the latter two groups. Don't be the group that watches things happen, and don't be in the group that wonders what happens. But put our energies to work, put our God-given talents and gifts to work, and allow those things to work together to promote the kingdom of God in our day, because when the kingdom is promoted, everybody in the culture is blessed. So thank you for being with us. And I want to remind you right at the outset, and I will do this again at the close of our time today, that you can become our partner in a tangible way. You can become our partner by giving to us. You can find us on Cash App at $SABWB, all caps. You can give right there on Cash App if you want to. You can give Venmo. We found out in our conference that those were the two most used giving mechanisms. But if you want to write a check, you can do that too. Write us a check. Write it to San Antonio in black, white, and brown, or SABWB, and put it in the mail to us. 8023 Vantage Drive, 8023 Vantage Drive, San Antonio. But what I'm looking for 1,500 people who will partner with us for $10 a month. Why $10? Because you won't miss it. It won't be something that you even have to think about. But that $10 a month, every one of us doing that quickly adds up, and it provides us with the resources that we need to fuel ministry going forward in the city where SABWB is concerned. And there's a lot on our plate to do. Oh my goodness. We're meeting every single week, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday with different groups. We meet political and legal professionals on Monday, business people. Today I had a meeting, met a new friend today in our business seat at the table. And then on Wednesdays is sports and entertainment personalities. And then on Thursdays it's ministry leaders and pastors. And then on Friday it's the I Pray experience. You will see our executive director, Natalie Hardy, in a commercial concerning the I Pray experience on Fridays in a moment. The weeks are full, they're impactful. We're gearing toward a collective time to bring all of those that we're meeting with daily to one big meeting in July the 23rd at Camargo Park. And so be on the lookout for that as we make preparations for those to come together to form a new power center. If things are not happening the way they should happen in the city, we don't have to wait on City Hall, don't have to wait on the police department, we don't have to wait on the business chamber. We need all of them. We need and want to work with all of them, but we don't have to sit on our hands and wait till they do something. We can actually move the ball down the field ourselves as we come together with purposeful intent. And SABWB is a place where you can link with those who are like-minded, and let's move the ball forward down the court together as we expand and express what we do here at SABWB for the benefit of our city. We are your voice in the marketplace. We're your voice in City Hall. We're your voice in pulpits around, in the faith community. We are your voice in sports and entertainment, and you are strengthening us by becoming our partners. So you can do that. You can even do it in our quick give. There's a way to quick give. Just text to give. Yes, you can find us on Venmo. You can find us on Cash App, and you can text to give. The number is 84321. Put the denomination that you want to give. And today, I was so grateful that we got a matching fund challenge gift during our conference back in the middle of May. It totaled about $12,000. A little less than half of that has actually been matched. And I got on the phone today and asked some dear friends who were willing to help me match the rest of it to do $1,000 each. And they started answering back. They answered back so quickly. One of them didn't even seem like they read the text before they were answering back. And I'm so grateful for their gratitude of heart. I'm so thankful for their heart. I have gratitude in my heart for their giving hearts. And maybe you want to be a part of it. You want to help us meet the rest of that match. You can do that by Cash Apping us. You can do that by your text to give 84321. Put the amount that you want to give and then a space in SABWB. The amount space SABWB. And it'll come right to us, and we'll be able right away to get to work with the resources that you've placed in our hands. And I'm so thankful for the people that the donors that supplied those challenge gifts. So grateful for them. But they gave it as a challenge to you. In other words, they're saying, match what I'm doing. Let your collective giving match what happens. So it turns $12,000 into $24,000 as you and I come together to do the things that we need to do in regard to that. So thank you to the ones who I spoke to today and have responded, and those that have not yet responded that I know are going to. And I'm so thankful for you too for making that happen. And you can join that Venmo, Cash App, text to give, write us a check, whatever you want to do to help. Okay, so that having been said, I want to move on to our subject matter for today. I'm only going to do 2 segments today. The first segment, the title of our program for today is The New Segregationist. I'm going to take some time to build why I've titled it The New Segregationist, and you're actually going to see a lot of that going forward, because it's a plan that others will help me think and strategize through how to roll this out and how then to respond to it in order for the betterment of our city to become the norm rather than this tugging and fighting and season that we have entered into. Sometimes it is necessary. Scripture says in the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a time for war. There's a time for peace. There are some things that you must be willing to fight for and fight over. There are some, because to lose them is too costly. To lose them is not just personal loss, it's societal loss. It is even the loss of a future. It can divert or endanger the future of a person, a family, a city, or a nation. And so there are some things you have to fight for, but you also have to know how to fight. You can always be reactionary, because the opposer will always do something to cause you to react, and many times on purpose to cause you to react, so that while you're actively trying to minimize some damage over here, they've gotten you all riled up, and they're actually planning something else on the other side. So SABWB is not a reactionary organization. We are a proactive organization, because we understand some things about what's shaping the culture, and we know that we have a responsibility to be leaders, influencers in shaping the culture of the city of San Antonio. You can help us, by the way, by just letting others know who are like-minded like you, that there is a place that they can support. And there's a place that they can become a part of. We just had a knockdown conference May 14th and 15th. And it's all on the backside of our website for our partners. There's a lot of stuff back there, leadership training and different things that help you move into the space where you can actually realize the level of influence and impact that you desire to have to make a positive change in the day you live and in the city where you live and in the time in which you live. So I'm thankful that you are of like minds and are moving in those directions, and that's very helpful. So I told you I was going to talk. Marilyn and Maddie, thanks for coming on tonight. And the others of you that are there, thank you so much for being a part of this happening tonight. Yes, I see the numbers are still climbing, and I'm so grateful for it. So like and share and comment, and I'll just look down at my phone every once in a while. Can't do that too much because my producer's in my ear, and she'll tell me, look up, look up, look up, all that stuff. And all that's important because it helps me communicate better with you. So, but let me just say something there. Like Marilyn just said, good evening. Maddie said, awesome, praise God. Say something in the comments and let me know you're there, and we can have a little dialogue as we talk here tonight. So here's the title for tonight is The New Segregationist. It's going to be in two halves. We're going to identify in the intro why the title The New Segregationist. And then we're going to look at two areas where segregation is going on. First, in the educational realm as it relates to the critical race theory, and then secondly, in the media, the fake media, that is no longer objectively handling information or disseminating information. They are using the informational platforms to actually push an ideology and to try to confirm that with the experience of others, and will out and out lie to get that done. So we're going to look at those three areas tonight, but two halves. We're first going to talk about why the new segregationist, why that title. Then secondly, we're going to look at the segregationist educational structure, particularly the critical race theory. And then secondly, we're going to look at the fake news media and what they have done to really rip this country apart. Who would have ever thought? I'm 60 years old. Who would have ever thought? I would have never thought that within my 60 years of life that we would be putting up with a media that, because the media used to be trusted voices, the Walter Cronkites. I know I'm giving my age away now, and Sam Donaldson and Tom Brokaw. Those were names that were really trusted. But the news media today, and even some of those personalities I just named, we found out that they, while they appeared trustworthy, that they were not always trustworthy. So we'll be looking at the fake news media and how that has played a part in what is going on in our nation today, really a design to rip it apart at the seams. So let's start with the first area. Why the new segregationist? Why the new segregationist? I have found a playbook. Let me let you know what a playbook is. If you're involved in sport or different types of enterprises, but I'll use a sports analogy. The playbook is designed to give you a list of plays, and on each play there is the role that each position on the field is going to take, the route that the receivers are going to run, the angle of blocking that the center and the two guards and the two tackles and the two tight ends are going to make, the holes that the backfield, the tailback and the fullback, or the two wing backs or whatever the arrangement is in the backfield, whatever hole they're going to go through is all in the playbook. And those plays are put together one after another in order to move the team successfully with the ball from wherever they are past the goal line. Now, that's not only true in sport. That's true in many enterprises, but it is also true where a culture is concerned. It's also true where governance of a nation is concerned, that there are playbooks. I know we don't think in these terms. We should think in those terms. Let me just bring a transcendent edge to our talk from the book of Ephesians, the 6th chapter, Ephesians chapter number 6. You're familiar with verse 10. It says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord," and so forth, in the power of His might. And then he instructs us to take on the whole armor of God, that we may be able to stand, listen to this, against the wiles of the devil, against the wiles of the devil. The same concept or word bled over into our Saturday morning cartoons when it came to the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. That's yeah, I know that dates me too. But the Wile E. Coyote was always putting together these plans to capture and consume the Roadrunner. That's why he was called the Wile E. Coyote. He's always thinking. He's always trying to develop a way, and he's always going to the hardware store to get what he needs to put together his plan that surely this time is going to catch him, the Roadrunner. Well, in the same way, the devil's wiles. There is a scheme that the enemy works. Now, we're told in that same passage, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. We do wrestle, but our wrestling is not against flesh and blood. It's hard not to see that our wrestling is not against flesh and blood when those principalities and powers use flesh and blood in order to carry out their agenda. Please understand this. There is no way for the enemy to good evening, Antonio. Thank you for looking in today. There's no way for the enemy to get his job done in the earth without human instrumentality. The enemy needs a mind to think with. The enemy needs a lips or tongues to speak with. The enemy needs hands to deal with. The enemy needs an emotional creature to emote certain feelings and to communicate certain intangible ideologies. The enemy must have the agreeableness, the agreement of a body, a person. But we're told that our battle is not against flesh and blood. While the enemy does use this flesh and blood, we have to understand that our battle is never against it. There is something behind it. There is something that is pushing against it. But he told us to take on the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, that we stand. But bring that up to say that in the environment where you and I find ourselves, whether it's in a city, the culture of a city or the culture of a neighborhood, even the culture of a household, there are attempts to move the house in a certain way. For example, if you have a strong-willed child in a household, that child is going to try to manage the house and move the house in the way that they want the house to go. If it means pitting mom against dad or vice versa, that child will do that because they're really out for their own way. So if the parents are not careful, then the attitude of the child will dominate the household. The same is true for cities, and the same is true for states and nations. Ideas or agendas are pushed with the attempt for those ideas or agendas to dominate the day. So I want to take you back now. We're about 25 minutes in, and I want to take you back to why we call this time the new segregationist. Looking back in our nation's history, if we just enter into that historical flow sometime in the mid to late 50s, we will see, here's what you will find. If I could time travel you back to that time period and put you in the South, particularly in Montgomery, Alabama, you would be shocked that you would be able to stand on the street corner in Montgomery, Alabama. Let's just say you're there but not there, and you're standing there and there are blacks and whites waiting on the bus that's coming. You would see the whites be able to get on the bus. This is in the 50s and later, but we have entered a time period in the 50s. You would see the whites be able to get on the bus, pay their fare, and take a seat with a sign on it that says "for whites only." You would see the black person get on the bus, pay their fare, and then have to get off the bus and walk to the back of the bus in order to get on. And in so doing, paying their fare, walking to the back of the bus to get on it from the back. That the bus may even pull off with the black person's fare in the chamber and leave them standing there on the sidewalk. You'd be shocked. You'd be infuriated. If you got on the bus, where you could, because you and I are just invisible observers of this time frame, you could get on the bus and you would see that while there's not enough white people to fill the white-only seats, they're still empty, and blacks are seated in the back or standing. Now, they're standing even if the seats are empty. You could even go on a bus at the time frame we're in. We've time traveled back to the 50s. You could get on the bus and you could see that the whites have filled their white-only seats, and we're coming up on another slot. And the whites have filled their white-only seats, and the blacks have filled theirs in the back of the bus. But the whites are getting on now. Can you see them? They're coming in the door. They're dropping the fare in, and they're looking to the back of the bus, and they suddenly realize that all of their white-only seats are taken. They will now walk back to where a black person is seated, man or woman, and the black person has to get up from their seats to allow the white person to sit down. Now, this is what you and I would see if we were in the 50s. We would see segregation in all of its ugly hues. We would see, if we were to go down to the drugstore, that we are able to spend our money as black people in the drugstore, but we would not be able to sit at the counter and get a pop, or we couldn't soda, or a milkshake. Or be served in any way. We could spend our money in the drugstore, but you can't get any service in that drugstore because you have to be white to sit at the drugstore counter, or you have to be white to get an ice cream cone or a soda. And what we stepped into in the 50s is all this going on, and you now if you're walking down the road in many of these cities, particularly in Montgomery, and a white person is coming towards you, you don't dare look at them, particularly if you're a black male and it's a white woman, you don't dare look at her. You look down and you cross the street and because you're trying to avoid trouble. All of this ugly segregation is going on, and it is the order of the day. It's the way life happens. So let's say, okay, you got your eyes and your belly full of that, and you don't want to take any more, but you can't get away from it. And let's say you're the person who has to stand, or you're the person that can't get service, or you're the person that needs to cross the street, or you're the person that needs to look down and not make eye contact. After a while, all of those things start to boil over, but they don't care. The ones who are on the receiving end of these privileges don't care, because it's their world, and you're just having to suffer through that world. Well, Rosa Parks sat down on a bus and decided that when asked to get up, she didn't sit down in the white-only section. She sat down in a seat that was available to her. But when the bus got crowded, she was asked to get up off her seat, and she refused. The law of the land required that she do so. It was called Jim Crow law. That law by this time would have been in effect almost 100 years. From 1865, it wasn't until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that the Jim Crow laws were destroyed. And you got to remember, prior to 1865, blacks were slaves. They were slaves up until January 1st, 1863, but the Civil War, which didn't end until 65, the outcome of that war actually determined the level of freedom that they would be allowed to exercise by way of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was written by Abraham Lincoln and in November, but brought into effect January 1st, 1863. So you have all these centuries of oppression, and it's all going on. Segregation was the monster. Segregation said, I'm better than you. Segregation says, my color's better than your color. Segregation says, I get service than you don't. Segregation says, I get better accommodations than you, public accommodations. You don't get any. I get all the public accommodations. Segregation says that based on the virtue, based only on the color of my skin, I'm better. Or based only on the fact that I have a bit more education than you, I'm better. Based only on the fact that I live on the other side of the tracks, I'm better. All of these segregationist ideas brought oppression on a people and was used to oppress them severely. But the civil rights movement did happen. Thank God it did happen. It cost Dr. King his life, and his brother also his life. Many don't know that, but it cost his brother his life also. His brother is the father of Alveda King, and she still carries that torch, as well as Bernice carrying the torch of her father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to this day. And thank God for the King family. Among those in the King family who are staying the course here. Thank you, Marilyn, so much for getting others to watch. I really appreciate you doing that. So here's what happens. The civil rights movement takes place, and the back of Jim Crow is broken to a large extent. It wasn't done away with altogether, but to a large extent it was. As nations, this nation has made wonderful leaps and bounds coming forward in this nation. Some of the things that the nation did, it needed to do, like the affirmative action program, it was designed to make sure that that equity, and remember that word, equity or equality, was being experienced in the workplace, and that Black people were not going to be marginalized simply because they were Black. But the companies were required now under the affirmative action program to hire into their managerial ranks, a certain quota of non-white managers and leaders. That needed to happen because there was such a stifling hold at the top by the persons in power. You heard of white privilege. This is what they're talking about. Historically, there has been a white privilege in the nation that has afforded promotions and different things to people based on their race. The glory of this thing is that the glory in the midst of this ugliness is that when you and I come to Christ, we come into the arena where it is possible to escape all of those limitations and boundaries, and to see beyond the skin color, and to see beyond other things that would be served, that will be used to separate us or to segregate us, and cause us to see the bright light of opportunity that is equally granted each person in Christ Jesus. For in Christ there is neither male nor female, bond of free, Jew nor Greek, but we're all one in Christ. So that it provides us an opportunity to move into that in the kingdom of God. Now, admittedly, in the kingdom, it has not always been executed well. In other words, prejudice and supremacy and all stuff has raised its ugly head in the church as much as it has many times in society. And so we have to beat that back. Thankfully, the persistence of people on all sides of the racial coin, as it was in the civil rights movement, the good heart of people, the people of goodwill, I should say, they opened their hearts and they began to work together and to create a different kind of environment that embraces this notion of the inclusion of everyone into the great American dream, and to welcome and embrace diversity in the expression of our lives in different communities, and to put us on an equal footing with each other. All of that was gained through the civil rights movement, and I use those terms on purpose: diversity, inclusion, equality, and sustainability, because you and I are going to face them. So then, if that was the story of the old segregationists, who are the new segregationists? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's define segregation. Segregation is the act of, or the encouraging of the act to separate, segregate, or to separate people and class people differently based on uh, mutabilities, things that can change, or immutabilities, things that can't. Like in the case of the old segregationists, it was an immutability. You can't change the color of your skin. You have a melanin in the skin. Well, you can do different things now, but it still doesn't change. You have to continue to do it, because that keeps coming back. So who are the new segregationists? The new segregationists of today is anyone and anything, any person or institution that seeks to segregate or separate or divide, making one better than the other, by whatever means they're choosing to do that. It could be money, it could be political party, it could be geography, it could be race, it could be any number of things. It could different types of affiliations, anything used to chop up the population into pieces and to cause those pieces to be at adversarial points one with another. That's the new segregationist. That's the new segregationist. So I want to look at two areas with you today that have emerged in our 21st century as segregationist. The first is the educational system. The first segregationist that I want to look at is the educational system. Now, systems are activated, systems are developed and maintained by people, but people can get, and often do, get entrenched into a system and start to promote the ideology of separateness, separating us one from another based on whatever they are choosing to use to put us at adversarial points of view. We have to be committed to transcend. We have to be committed to go beyond those things that are seeking to separate and divide us. In the educational system, there are a lot of things. I want you to consider this, because we do have to go after change in the educational system, but it takes quite an effort to do that. Because like in the city of San Antonio, for example, there are 17 different school districts. And those school districts combined represent probably the largest employer in the city of San Antonio. That is with the teachers, that's with the administrative personnel, that's with the support folks, that's with the grounds maintenance and the kitchen and all of that. Not to mention the aids that the teachers and the scholastic equipment and support that they must receive, all of that. These seven, and they represent more real estate in the city. They also represent the largest sector that is receiving the most amount of money in a city. And yet that institution can become, and has become, a segregationist. The present educational system is the new segregationist, one of them. We're going to talk about several. But today, we're going to focus on the school system and the media. The school system itself has stepped up its pace in demonstrating itself as a segregationist through the introduction of a new curriculum called the critical race theory. The critical race theory. Now, I want to just quickly remind you of this. The school system still promotes a theory that came out of a book written by a man named Charles Darwin back in 1859, and it was called, you know it by its short title, which is The Origin of the Species, talking about where man came from. But that's not the full title. The Origin of the Species by Natural Selection for the Preservation of the Favored Race. Yes, The Origin of the Species by Natural Selection for the Preservation of the Favored Race. The book called The Origin of the Species is a racist document, and it was used by the educational system to fly in the face of the biblical account of man's creation, using so-called science to discount that biblical record, and to promote racism among the human race, and justify such racism on the basis of scientific development being more keen and more developed in white men than in non-white individuals. And they have been promoting that lie of the evolutionary theory since the 1850s, and early 1860s. And remember, he wrote this book in 1859. It was in 1861, 2 years later, that the Civil War started, and it was started largely over keeping the right for Southern states, especially, to keep a people group, Africans, to keep them enslaved on this basis that they had no superhuman development, or they didn't have as much human development as their white counterparts, and therefore they could be treated as animals. And then they had Charles Darwin's work to validate their position on people. Now, that same system, the educational system, is now coming out with another brand of that evolutionary theory stuff, but this time it's not scientific in terms of it being, the physical sciences or the chemical sciences. This time it is the psychological position that the educational system is taking. It deals more with the social sciences and the critical race theory. Here again is the difficult place, because the idea, as in the evolutionary theory, the critical race theory also seeks to be taught at the lower levels of education, forming into the minds of developing children who are not yet able themselves to distinguish truth from falsity, who are not able to have enough of a dialogue to even ask the right questions about critical race, the objections to critical race theory. Please understand that this is not the critical race theory is not an attempt to finally cause America to come face to face with its racist history and past. I challenge you, as I will in weeks on this program, to actually pull out the critical race theory information and look at it ourselves, so you can see for yourself what it is, as opposed to hearing. You're going to hear some people who have read it today, and we're going to take a look at it. In a moment, I'm going to show you a video of this is in the video where there is a moderator and a black police officer and a white man, and they're both talking about the critical race theory. I want to show you that one first, so that it's about 4 minutes long. And I want you to just listen to the dialogue that is being had between this moderator and these two people, these two, one black man and one white man, And then right after that, I'll come back and make some comments about it. And then I'm going to take you into these school board meetings where parents are rising up against this thing. It is time for, and remember I told you there was a time for war. There is a time for war. There's things worth fighting for, and there are things worth fighting against, because to lose them is too costly. Watch this video about this moderator and the two people that she's talking with, and then right after that, I'll come back.
CRT is not racial sensitivity or simply teaching unfavorable American history or teaching Jim Crow history. CRT is deeper and more dangerous than that. CRT, in its outworking today, is a teaching that there is a hierarchy in society where white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied people are deemed the oppressor, and anyone else outside of that status is oppressed. That's why we see corporations like Coca-Cola asking their employees to be less white, which is ridiculous. I don't know about you, but telling my child or any child that they are in a permanent oppressed status in America because they are black is racist. And saying that white people are automatically above me, my children, or any child is racist as well. If this continues, we will look back and be responsible for the dismantling of the greatest country in the world by reverting to teaching hate and that race is a determining factor on where your destiny lies.
Our kids, are they half oppressor, half victim? How does that work?
And when they come home, who do they see? Do they see their mom and their dad? Or do they see an oppressor and the oppressed?
In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Now I have a dream that we will implement love, not hate, or supporting another Jim Crow's agenda. CRT is not an honest dialogue. It is a tactic that was used by Hitler and the Ku Klux Klan on slavery very many years ago to dumb down my ancestors so we could not think for ourselves. CRT is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color. We don't want your political advertisement to divide our children or belittle them. Think twice before you indoctrinate such racist theories. You cannot tell me what is or is not racist. Look at me. I had to come down here today to tell you to your face that we are coming together and we are strong. This will not be the last. Greet and meet respectfully.
Daddy teaches you can be anything in this world that you want to be, right? Don't Daddy teach you that?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're black or white or any color.
Doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, yellow, right?
Black.
And how we treat people is based on who they are and not what color they are.
And if they're nice and smart.
See, this is how children think right here. Critical race theory wants to end that. Not with my children. It's not gonna happen. My baby's gonna know that no matter what she wants to be in life, all she has to do is work hard, and she can become that.
Work hard, even though you don't know anyone. You can make friends.
Yeah, you can make friends, no matter what color they are. So we need to stop CRT. Period. Point blank. Children do not see skin color, man. They love everybody. If they're good people, they love them.
We pray for people that are hurt.
Girl, right? You just want to grab those little cheeks and squeeze them. And we pray for people that are hurt, just out of the mouth of babes and sucklings. So you see that there is a people rising up against those who are trying to teach. The basis of the critical race theory is that because of the color of your skin in this country, that you have come from an oppressive race, and you have to own that oppression that you put on others, and that those who are not your color, you have oppressed, and they are you are the continual oppressor, and they are the continual victim. And when children hear that and they are gauging those statements based on the color of a person's skin, it is exact opposite. I want to take you now to a young man. He has on a yellow shirt and some khaki pants, and you'll find out that he's well educated. But that man also is speaking out against the critical race theory because of where he has come in life, and the things that you and I need to grab a hold of are the things like this man at least to some degree, that this man is talking about. Watch this video and I'll be right back.
Whose fault is it going to be? Whose fault is it going to be? Who we going to look back on and blame for this? Because this is stuff we talking about right now. This stuff is going on right now. I do this stuff on a daily basis. I'm in the hood. I'm in the communities. I'm out there with folks in their face. I've been doing this stuff since I was 18 years old, talking to black folks. And you know what? None of them are buying this nonsense. None of them are. But if you want to implement this into the school system, I guarantee you to the day that I die, I'm going to be the very person right there debunking stuff, tearing stuff down, letting them know they can do exactly what I did and get exactly where I am by putting themselves to work and getting there. And ain't not one white person ever going to keep any of them from getting there. So the CRT stuff, BS.
Well, there you have it. Articulate and speaking out against. He himself has got a couple of master's degrees. He's a doctor, and he says, if the stuff that they're promoting in CRT is real, how did I get where I am? What white man can I point at to tell me that I couldn't achieve? We're not where we were in this country, people. Representative State Senator Tim Scott, a black man out of South Carolina, gave an incredible rebuttal. You'll see it next week to the State of the Union address. And in it, he says that America is not a racist country. Now, that doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist in America. It does. But America is not the racist country it was back in the 50s and 60s and the centuries before that. Yes, the ugliest blight on America is its racial stain, the stain of slavery. But much to this nation's credit, in reference to it going to God and valuing human life and coming out of that, our progress is what we should be celebrating, rather than placing the weight of responsibility on the lineage of people who were responsible for oppressing another people. Because in so doing, you carry forth the oppression of a race upon one race upon another, and you carry forth the victimhood of one race in the sight of another, and even in their own sight. That the victimized race can begin to see themselves as victims, and they never rise to the place where they can begin to spread their own wings, so to speak, and live this out. I want to show you now this last, some conversation statements coming up there. That's great. Let's see if I can get it. Chelsea says, I was just having this conversation just the other day. Yeah, and she is a precious child. And yeah. So you and I have to be able to be the kinds of people that transcend above this and move beyond CRT. Now I'm keeping my ear to the ground, so to speak, as the Indians used to do, to be able to sense movement. I'm keeping my ear to the ground as far as CRT is concerned in our 17 school districts here in the city of San Antonio. I've asked teachers. Now, I've come to understand that there's 185 teachers, even as we speak, down in southern Florida, who is getting instruction on how to teach critical race theory without calling it critical race theory in our school system. It is being billed by some to say that it is really America coming to grips with its own racial history and past. This is not that. Now, I told you about the video where there was a moderator and two people at her side. I'm going to take you to that piece of video and take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
Last year, thanks to the pandemic, parents got a front row seat to what their children are being taught. And this is not, for example, the history of racism or denunciations of racism. It's not the history of slavery or Jim Crow. Parents of all races are happy to have their children learn about that, to have their children understand why all of that was a stain on our nation. This is something else. This is telling that there are two groups of Americans, and depending on their skin color, one group are oppressors and one group are permanent victims. And that's incredibly anti-American. Some of the trainings are racially segregated. The idea that, for example, 4-year-olds have to unpack their racial privileges is deeply, deeply radical and un-American. So when American parents hear that you don't get CRT, it's not what you think it is, it's just about diversity training, it's just about teaching our past, that's a lie, and we're being gaslighted. And so I'm incredibly cheered by this uprising of parents across the country, including, as you noted, Shannon, many African American parents who don't want to be told that their children are permanent victims and that they're utterly oppressed. That's just, as I said, it's an un-American idea. And so this uprising is very healthy. And it gives me a lot of hope about the future of this country, frankly, because this is poison propaganda. It's not teaching diversity training. It's not teaching anti-racism. This is something else. This is a kind of neo-Marxism.
Okay, Brandon, you touched on some of those themes too. I want to make sure to get some reaction from you, Brandon, tonight to what the president is saying, because you've been on the front lines. You have served our community by being a police officer in uniform. Here's what he said in his speech today about getting a hold of crime, which is clearly in some cities soaring right now. Here's the president.
No one needs to have a weapon that can fire over 30, 40, 50, even up to 100 rounds. Unless you think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests or something. Community policing and programs that keep neighborhoods safe and keep folks out of trouble. These efforts work, they save lives.
So, Brandon, he talked about a lot of things, but a lot of emphasis on gun control today, and he's there talking about hunting and deer wearing Kevlar vests. I mean, when I was in law school, I didn't learn that the Second Amendment was about hunting. But listen, you've been on the front lines, so I'd like to get your take on what the president said today.
Well, I don't know if the speechwriter is the dumbest person in the world or Joe Biden is the dumbest person in the world, but anybody with common sense know that what he's explaining about deer and hunting and the Second Amendment is asinine. You know, you're not going to curb crime by stopping law-abiding citizens for having guns. I mean, just use common sense. If you don't care about killing people, you definitely don't care about illegally being in possession of a firearm. So therefore, the laws are not going to stop criminals. I don't understand how we don't see that at this point. What we do need to focus on is people who are committing the crimes. The gun is not the problem. The person with the gun is the problem. And for him to go out and say a gun shouldn't have 100 rounds, well, Joe Biden, if you have two magazines with 30 rounds apiece, that's 60. You put 3 in there, then now you can shoot up as many people as you want to. So how ignorant is it that you are worried about a single capacity magazine when you're not looking at the totality of circumstances? Most people are shot and killed by handguns, not even rifles. And then most people who are killed due to suicide, self-inflicting wounds. It has nothing to do with the American population going out and massively killing people. Also, do the math. When we started talking about defunding the police, when they start demoralizing law enforcement in this country, we see crime go up. It goes out of control. The gun laws have not changed in the last couple of years. It's been the rhetoric against police officers. And if you keep bashing them, they're not going to proactively police. They're going to leave the police department at astronomical numbers. And these communities are just going to get shot up every weekend because you don't have people there to protect and serve. So if he really wanted to make a difference, stop focusing on foolishness and start empowering and emboldening police officers, funding them so they can protect the community the way we believe that they were supposed to do from the very beginning.
Yeah, and some of these most vulnerable communities are the ones who say they want more police there and they feel like they need them in order to keep them safe. Brandon, thank you for your years out there in service. So, Rob, thank you for being with us tonight. It's great to see both of you.
Thank you, Shannon. God bless you.
There is still some common sense left in our land. There's still some common sense left among people who will decide to transcend above the things that are seeking to be taught in our schools and to our children, because the school system as it exists is one of the new segregationists being used to divide us, to divide the thought processes of our children, to shape them negatively one toward another, or to cripple them emotionally one toward another, to offer an opportunity for a new ideology to be the order of the day. And you and I have to stop it. We have to rise up against it wherever it exists. Now, while I'm grateful and glad to be able to tell you that Proposition B in our last city elections did not pass, I also need to quickly say to you that those who wanted Prop B to pass and to defund the police have not stopped. Now, let me just say, right on the heels of that, and I know that both Chief William McManus, whom I know and respect, and President Danny Diaz, who is the president of the San Antonio Police Officers Association, who I also know and respect, that both of those men are aware of the fact that a different image needs to be placed on the police. I did a broadcast right here on Transcendent, tracing the origin of police and how they began to first engage the people, especially in the South. They were ones who were enforcing Jim Crow. The authorities of the day, the police in the South, were the one who were telling Black people, you can't go there and you can't sit here and you can't do that and you can't do this, or to unduly and unfairly harass, beat, even kill Black people in the South. And in the North, it wasn't any better. They started out as being couriers of equipment and supplies from the harbors to the points of their destination, trying to safely courier them. But what they fell victim to was those who had these large shipments and was making much money by it, that when they became official, the first official police department in the U.S. is in Massachusetts, but it was filled with such corruption because the police were bought. The people who paid them money could get away with more money than they were getting, from their municipal wages. They could buy favor and could buy assignment even, and buy activity to be done in their favor. So the police, both in the North and the South, did not have stellar beginnings. It wasn't until a commission took place and they began to look at the police to increase the quality of people character-wise that became police, and then an accountability to make that happen. You can go back and look at some of the previous shows and see where we talked about that. But I know that these two men, McManus and Chief McManus and Mr. Diaz, they're committed to bringing the kinds of reforms to the San Antonio Police Department that is needed, at the same time maintaining a position of strength so that they can both hire personnel and gain equipment that makes their life safer and easier to do their job in the city of San Antonio, to protect and serve every community equally. We're moving toward that. We have to celebrate where we have come from, acknowledge where improvements need to be made, and work toward those improvements in good faith toward one another, seeking to inject justice into the system rather than looking to punish those that the media can make look like. And in some cases, it's true. In many cases, they're power hungry police officers, and they go above and beyond what they should do. The badge is giving them a false sense of bravado. And when I was in the military, oh man, so very true. CRT is oppressive and CRT is evil. Thank you, Maddie. Mabel, thank God. Governor Abbott signed the bill that says CRT will not be taught in Texas schools. Yes, we are indeed thankful to God for that. However, the signing of the bill itself does not mean that these 185 teachers that are right now in Florida are learning how to deliver the information of CRT without calling it CRT. But as closely connected as parents were to their children because of COVID, and you had an opportunity to see what they were learning, parents, it's time for you to step up again. If you see this stuff coming across the desk toward homework toward your children, you need to be the first to make sure that you fill these board meetings and insist that this kind of stuff is not embraced by your teacher corps nor taught by your teacher corps to your children. There's some work to do. And I'll say again before I move on to talk about the media, the school system itself, in the way that in which it currently operates, is one of the new segregationists. And we have to plan some action, just as they did in the 50s and 60s. We have to take a course of action that confronts that segregationist ideas, those segregationist ideas, and bring a stop to them and replant love and self-respect and motivation back into our children and back into our culture. And SABWB is one of the think tanks in our city that is committed to make that happen, not to just think the strategy through, but then to execute it. And executing means that we need your partnership to make that happen. You know, I was going to do a second section on the media, and I'm just going to quickly look into the media. I want to play this Prager University piece, and I'm going to talk you into the piece. Prager, you put this piece out in terms of how the media has shaped perception. My daughter, who produces this show, encourages me to read a book called "The Pen is Mightier Than the Sword." Now I know that to be the case, but there are many things in the book for me to detail and read. Oh, okay. There is a phrase that says the pen is mightier than the sword, but the title of the book, it just says mightier than the sword, because it's not just talking about the pen only, it's talking about media. It's talking about the power of media in many forms, printed media, now visual media, to be able to shape the opinions of people. And boy, like no other time, just as school systems, the way in which they now exist, are the new segregationist, fake media is also the new segregationist. I want to take you to a piece that Prager University did, because the media just took something that President Trump used. It said during what happened in Charlottesville, and put a headline on it. They put a headline, a slanderous headline about President Trump, and then printed that this is what he said in the paper, when they knew that what they were saying was taken out of context, but they were using the incident to shape the opinions of people. It's a Prager University piece. Prager University. It on the video itself, it will say Prager University. It's a man, it's a white guy in a suit with a tie on, and that as soon it begins to play, you'll see come up on the frame. You'll see Prager University. We're going to go to commercial, and right after commercial, I'll show you that Prager University piece. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, the founder of San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown, also known as SABWB. SABWB is the premier leadership space where influencers from every race and position and perspective converge to build relationships and collaborate on the implementation of principles that shape the culture. SABWB is your voice speaking aloud for integrity, for justice, and transparency and truth in our city. SABWB is your platform for collaboration leading to impact and transformation. SABWB is your presence in the marketplace of ideas in business and politics and education, sports, entertainment, health and wellness, media, and the church. SABWB needs your partnership as we together transcend the boundaries of race and class and build a kingdom culture here in San Antonio. Partnership is only $10 a month, easy enough for all of us to participate. Many of us doing a little will have major impact in our city. To partner, go to sabwb.org or text SABWB space your gift to 84321. Thank you in advance. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, your host for Transcendent. Transcendent is SABWD's online weekly broadcast, aired here on Influence's platform. Join me and other key leaders from various pillars of influence which shape the culture of San Antonio for innovative and strategic dialogue. Each week, we will address core community values and principles that need to be restored and re-implemented into our culture of our great city. This may often necessitate identifying where these values and principles are being compromised and reflecting on the damaging impact that such actions may have if left unaddressed. But ultimately, we want to take the conversation beyond ordinary limits, exceed the normative boundaries, and implement bold, time-tested principles across the pillars of influence in our city, which will result in the positive transformation of the culture. I look forward to visiting with you each week here on Transcendent. Thank you so much for partnering with us. And you'll see us grow and expand because you are, thank you, Janice. Thank you, my precious wife. She says, if you're an influencer of any type, please partner with SABWB for only $10 a month. Janice, I just love you. Thank you for being a voice of support. This woman has stood by her crazy man for 40 years now. 40. Okay, so what? Yes, I saw that. So I'm going to take you now to this Prager University video that I was talking to you about before the commercial break. Here's this video. What happened in Charlottesville is the title of the video. What happened in Charlottesville? Let's go to it.
Politicians lie. We all know that. This is not an indictment of all politicians. It's simply part of the game. It's our job as informed citizens to figure out the truth. And that's where journalists and the media come in. They are supposed to help us ferret out fact from fiction. So when they get a fact wrong, that's bad. When they get a fact wrong, know it's wrong, and don't correct it, that's worse. That's not getting a fact wrong, that's a lie. And that's journalistic malfeasance. The best, or maybe worst, example of this followed a presidential press conference at Trump Tower on Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. You remember what happened that previous weekend.
Hear the video.
A group of white supremacists held a white pride rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. The ostensible reason was to protest the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. An Antifa group showed up to counter-protest. The mayor and the police were totally unprepared to deal with the violence that ensued. Tragically, a young woman, Heather Heyer, was run over and killed by a neo-Nazi. The press conference itself was raucous. The media was antagonistic. The president was combative. Out of it all, one phrase eclipsed the thousands of words exchanged. The media reported that President Trump described neo-Nazis as very fine people. Only he didn't. In fact, he didn't even hint at it. Just the opposite. He condemned the neo-Nazis in no uncertain terms. So then, who were the fine people he mentioned? The answer? He was referring to another group of Charlottesville demonstrators who came out that weekend. Protesters who wanted the Robert E. Lee statue removed, and protesters who wanted to keep the statue and restore the park's original name. This is what President Trump said about those peaceful protesters. You also had some very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue, and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. A few moments later, in case there would be any misunderstanding, he makes his meaning even more explicit. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally. Lest you have any doubts that good people were in Charlottesville to protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue, the New York Times confirmed it in a story they published the next day, August 16th. Good people can go to Charlottesville, said Michelle Percy, a night shift worker at a Wichita, Kansas retirement home who drove all night with a conservative group that opposed the planned removal of a statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. After listening to Mr. Trump on Tuesday, she said it was as if he had channeled her and her friends who had no interest in standing with Nazis or white supremacists. There's another simple test that we can employ to prove that the president was not referring to the neo-Nazis as fine people. It's so obvious, it's painful to mention. The president's daughter and son-in-law are Orthodox Jews. His grandchildren are Jewish. And if that's still not enough to convince you, how about this? Does anyone believe that Donald Trump thinks they're a good Antifa? The leftist thugs who were counter-protesting the neo-Nazi thugs? After all, if those two groups were the only ones involved, and there were fine people on both sides, that means the president believed that there were fine Antifa people. Even MSNBC should have found that hard to swallow. Again, the very fine people on both sides President Trump described at the press conference were the people who wanted to remove the Robert E. Lee statue and the people who wanted to keep it. Both of these groups were nonviolent protesters, fine people with very different ideological views. The scandal of Charlottesville is not what President Trump said about neo-Nazis. It's what the media said President Trump said about neo-Nazis. It's a scandal because news reporting is supposed to be about gathering facts, not promoting an agenda. In Charlottesville, they got it exactly backwards. We have been living with the consequences ever since. Plainly put, ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the others spread a malicious lie that has poisoned our national dialogue. They should apologize to the American people for what they have done. Don't hold your breath. Actually, I have a better idea. Let out a big sigh of relief, because now you know the truth. I'm Steve Cortez, CNN political commentator and columnist for Real Clear Politics for Prager University. Thank you.
Can you believe that a CNN key person wrote that and put that together? Now, probably to this day, some of you have believed the lies of the media that spread concerning President Trump's words about neo-Nazi and Antifa being fine people. Now, the reason you believe that is because you believe what the media said to you. And I'm saying to you, just as our school system, as it's currently run, has become a part of the new segregationist, the media, the fake media, has also become a part of the new segregationist. So as in the past, in the 50s and 60s, when segregation again was seeking to rip the seams of the nation apart and to oppress others and manifest the bigotry and the hatred in the heart of the others, Martin Luther King Jr. and others had to stand up against it. It's time for a new movement against segregation, one that characterizes our day, one which celebrates where we have come from, one who celebrates diversity as it's defined in the Bible. Because I'll end with this notion again. You're going to hear floating through the media, taking the words of those winners back in the 50s and 60s and twisting them to accommodate their own means and to make those words include what they did not include then. And I'll just tell you straight out, one of the things that this whole idea of diversity, inclusion, equality, and sustainability is seeking to include is the LGBTQIA agenda. It is now Pride Month. We're in this, what they would call Pride Month. And our city hall is now boasting about raising a flag over City Hall that reflects the LGBTQIA community. Have embraced it because those ideas of diversity, inclusion, equality, and sustainability have been redefined. We cannot fight against the words at face because we all, as a people of God, embrace diversity. We serve a God of diversity. We want diversity. We want all of the talent and the abilities and all of the qualities, the godly character and qualities that He's placed in each of us. We want to give space for that to come forth. We want to respect the fact that it's there and then to honor it as it comes forth out of all of us. But the way that it is being defined is the way that it wasn't defined in the 50s and 60s. Because what do you mean? In the 50s and 60s, while the civil rights movement was going on, there was also another revolution going on called the sexual revolution. And in the sexual revolution, the homosexual community also was putting forth its own ideas of freedom and actually tried to get the civil rights movement to adopt their notions, and Dr. King and the framers of the Civil Rights Act did not embrace what was so prevalent in that day. But in this day, when there are less of us who actually know about the purity of the civil rights movement, and you will hear me talk a lot about the autobiography of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how our present day segregationists, that as the segregationists of old seek to oppress. Listen, the oppressed group in the 50s and 60s were Black people. The oppressed group in our present day is Judeo-Christians, Judeo-Christian faith. That is what is being oppressed everywhere now. Because if you raise your head as though you are against this LGBTQIA plus community and its ideas, then you are a bigot. You are small-minded. You're myopic. You're antiquated. All of those names. You're racist. All of those terms thrown at you. You are religious elite. All of those terms. And these popular people get on talk shows and they bring preachers on talk shows. Prominent preachers like Bishop T.D. Jakes and Pastor Joel Osteen and the church that Brian Houston down in Australia, Hillsong, the Hillsong churches that are here, and particularly in New York City and its leadership, all of that Oprah will parade them before these large audiences and ask them questions about, is Jesus the only way? And is Jesus the only way to God? Because she doesn't believe that it is. In fact, she's convinced that Jesus is not the only way to God. And she will bring these guys on and ask them critical questions like that. And then they will, because they're, wanting to kind of walk the middle of the road, will be very unclear about about things for which the scriptures are bravely clear. Listen, there is an offensive element about the gospel. Everyone is not going to like it. Everyone's not going to agree with it. But then the love of God through us, we speak the truth, but we speak the truth in love, so that the love of God is what dominates the day. And we're able to stand on the platform of God's truth with a heart full of love and tell it anyway. And then I rely on the power of the Holy Spirit to touch people's heart and change people's lives. But this whole media thing has now gotten us willing to compromise our stances, and we want to be, very erudite and scholarly and very, a wordsmith. We want to be able to say something that tickles the ear and something that, is palatable to the masses. there is an element of the gospel that is offensive. It's offensive to human sensibilities. It's offensive to humanism. It's offensive to things that are not in alignment with the things of God. And you and I have to be willing not only to allow those things to run their due course to bring correction in us, because God knows we also need correction on a daily basis. God knows we need correction in our own thinking. We're not the pure as the driven snow and can stand up and say, I've never made a mistake or an error, or I've never sinned or transgressed or walked in iniquity. We have, in fact, but it's the grace of God that allows us to be forgiven of those things and to stand in his presence as if though they never existed, because of the efficacy of the blood, because of the power of the blood. That is the gospel. And God has made a way. God has, listen, if Jesus was not the only way to God, then all of this, God himself would then be the greatest sadomasochist ever recorded in all time and eternity. To take his son through such brutality and through such shame and through such pain, when he didn't have to, if there were many ways to God. You have to be able to, if you're sitting on Oprah's couch, or if you're having a Bible study in your own living room, don't allow things that are coming through the media to move you from the truth that is in God's word. Stand on his word, saints. Stand on his word and let the Spirit of God affirm that you have spoken the truth in love, and allow him to change people's hearts without taking down from any of that. The new segregationists, I've introduced them, two of them to you today. The new segregationist is the educational system as it exists, namely with the pushing forth of CRT. But not just that. If you want to see segregation, look at the school. Look at the school district. The districts of the poor, you have to send your children to the educational systems in your poor area. If you live in a rich, you send your children to the schools in their rich area. The way the system has operated makes it segregationist. And you and I have to do something about it. Many-pronged attack. There is an attack already in place, and we have to know it as parents and know it as students and know it as society and move to do something about it. The second segregationist that I introduced you tonight was the media. I'm sorry that we have to wade through refuse up to our noses now, where the media is concerned. Out and out lies that they know are lies, and they're counting on you not to do anything to research. They're counting on you to take the emotional pill, not the red pill. They're counting on you to swallow the blue pill and believe everything that is coming at you from the media world as truth, and get emotionally stirred by it and believe everything in your culture concerning it, because they have lied to you. There is a way, however, there is a way to combat it. Proper media channels that don't lean in a direction, in the opposite direction, because they want you to believe that way either, but objective reporting. One of the assignments of SABWB. So if you got a couple of mil you want to drop on me tonight, I need some vans. I need with some uplink equipment. I need some satellite equipment in them. I need news teams, articulate, so that we can get the news out objectively, so that we as a viewing audience can trust what is coming over the news. So we don't have to sit here and wait on somebody to do it. We can do it ourselves. Our partnership allows it. So listen, you may be sitting there and saying, I know we need that. And I know somebody who can fund it. 8023 Vantage Drive. 8023 Vantage Drive. San Antonio 78228. Together, we'll be able to establish something that has the capacity to restore credibility in the media space with people who are not paid by a certain conglomerate that wants to get a certain message out to you, but just Mr. and Mrs. Joe and Joan Friday, who just want to go report the news, and they want to see the good, bad, and the ugly, and they won't let you see it. They'll tone the news with a positive tone rather than a negative. Our own human psyche. We turn on the news because we want to find out what has happened bad. How about turning on the news to see, yes, there's some things that happen bad, but here's what's happened that's good in our culture. Here's what's happened that's good in our community. Listen, the established mechanisms and media centers are probably not going to do that. So we have to ourselves get the news out, and in a medium where people can begin to trust it. But we need, you and I need the kind of equipment and personnel that can get that done. And anything is possible with proper funding. So if you know somebody who's sitting on millions, and there are some that are, and are willing to look for a place to put those millions, to put them to work for the sake of bettering the city of San Antonio, then we are partners. Speaking of partners, I've been here almost a little over an hour and a half with you tonight. I broke this down into 2 sections, thinking that we might get out a little quicker, but these conversations just they're necessary to be had, and sometimes you just can't microwave a conversation like this. We have to think our way through it. But I want to close with showing you how you can become an SABWB partner. I'll say to you several times, I've said to you several times, I'll say in this closing section as well, you can Cash App us immediately. We're at $SABWB, all caps. And you can Cash App us tonight and say, go for it. Go for it, SABWB. You are my voice, and I want you to be my voice in politics, in the space, in the entertainment and sports space. I want you to be my voice in business. I want you to be my voice in the pulpit and in ministry opportunities. I want to join with your voice in prayer to God as we seek his face and wisdom. You can do that tonight just by going on Cash App. Find us at $SABWB. You can also find us on Venmo and pay, make a donation on Venmo. You can go to our website and on the front page, just scroll down to where you see give a donation. Click here to give a donation. You'll see it right there on the screen. Click here to give a donation. You can do that and just put your information in. But here's how you become our partners. When you click the thing that says that you want to be a partner, you'll see that some information will come up there, and then you can choose what level of partnership you want to give. Look, if you can give 100 and it's not missed to you, then please do that, because you will actually be 10 of the ones that I'm asking for. If you can do it 100 a month, please do. And once you do that, you're going to get an email from us, and check that email. And that email, once you put your password in, it will give you access to the backside of our website. And back there, you can see everything that we're doing, and you can become a part of that in a real way and help us together. We can make the kind of change in our city that we want to see made. What you're looking at now, some examples of what's on the backside. Dr. Simone Gold's talk is back there, and all of that. That was an incredible day. The house was full, and people were excited. We had Dr. Dennis Peacock. I did an opening session. Some younger people. My son Jarrell, who's, by the way, he just dropped a new single called Never Alone. Guys, you need to go out to iTunes. You need to stream it. You need to get it. As soon as I found out it was out there, I went out and bought it. And I want you to get a hold of that, because it's people in the entertainment space like that, ministry/entertainment space, that carry a certain message and lifts a people, that allows you to bless your community and to be blessed as you listen to it. So follow through with those things, and I'm so glad that you guys are just on this thing. Woe to those who compromise God's word. You're right. You're right. Progressive Christianity, New Age Christianity. Oh, I'm so proud of y'all because you talk like you got some sense. You talk like people who are well informed and people who love Pastor. This was very informative. Thank you, Mabel, for being such a constant. Janice, thank you for putting the address in as well. So you can mail your partnership donations to that address, but you can also Cash App and Venmo and become our monthly partner and do it at $10 so you don't think about it. If you can do it at 100 and don't think about it, do it at 100. But become that consistent monthly partner that helps us budget as we move forward with the mission and the vision of San Antonio and Black, White, and Brown. Thank you again for being with us today, and we will see you next week around this time for Transcendent. Bye-bye now.